Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Never before in the history of sports podcasts have two men brought you opinion and analysis like these two. They speak for a city that's desperate for wins and titles, not whining and travesty. You might not agree with what they have to say, but you'll defend their right to say it. Sports fans across the world, from Chicago, Illinois, this is the Mac and Reed Show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another edition of the Mac and Reed Show right here on the Barroom Network. Of course, follow at Barroom Network for all of the Breaking Bears news in the offseason that you need, football coverage, baseball, basketball, whatever you like, Chicago and beyond. We got it. Follow us on social media. Follow me at the Real Evan Mac. Follow Ross at Ross Reed. And if you've missed any of the previous episodes, they're up on YouTube. We're streaming live on YouTube right now on the Barroom Network's channel. You can see our lovely faces. Spotify, iTunes for audio-only versions. Remember, like, subscribe, tell a friend or two. But, of course, I'm joined, as always, by my co-host. Just cop tickets to Glorilla in the spring. Not Gorilla, Glorilla. Your girl Glow. Pouring over the Senior Bowl tape. Made it to the end of January unscathed. His latest favorite weed strain is that Bruce Banner. Ladies and gentlemen, Ross Reed.
Yes, sir. How you doing? Almost made it to January. January is just the worst.
It drags. Everybody makes the same joke towards the end here. It's
so
like,
so much.
What week of January is it?
My God.
Nothing on the Bruce Banner. I was going to say Banana Daddy for your favorite weed strain, but it felt wrong, and it still feels wrong saying it to you.
Yeah, I like the Bruce Banner. We get a Captain America movie in like a week too, or like a week or two.
Yeah, you can't forget.
We got a Red Hulk now with the old Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford. That's called range, baby. Where you go from shrinking to Captain America as the Red Hulk.
Right, Han Solo is now the Red Hulk.
Yeah, good for him. I love it, man. Quick question for you because I'm drinking on a Tangerine LaCroix. What is the GOAT LaCroix flavor for you?
Oh, that's a good question.
Everybody's gonna point to the pamplemousse. People will get real fancy.
I was gonna say
cucumber pamplemousse.
The pamplemousse is good.
The fact I learned from my father is like, don't get the grapefruit one because if you're taking heart medication, you can't have that because of the grapefruit or something like that.
Ooh. I have actually over the time I have retired the Pellegrino in favor. I mean the LaCroix in favor of the San Pellegrino.
Oh, there you go.
Mostly because I like the tall, slender can as well.
Brother and his wife do that as well.
Yeah,
they do the bottle.
Correct. Yes,
exactly. I don't like the big fat bottles. That's a pro move, though. I like it. Then you can, you get the little slender can fit more in there.
Yes.
I respect it, Ross.
Yes, it fits better in the cup holder when I'm in the car too.
There you go. Well, LaCroix and sparkling water aside, we got a lot to get to on the show today. We'll be talking Bears to lead these shows. There were some movements in Ben Johnson's coaching staff. It'll be pretty Super Bowl heavy as that is not this weekend, but the next weekend. I'm excited about the Chiefs and Eagles going at it. We'll talk NBA a little later in the show. Very briefly, surprises along the way. I haven't made a crack in my Oscars nomination list, although I watched Challengers and I was not impressed. And now they got snubbed. Everybody loved that soundtrack too, which was just intense and it was a good score. What was it? Trent Reznor?
Trent Reznor, who was one of the goats in the game. Everybody was upset that he did not get nominated. I thought it was a good score. It definitely matched the tennis scenes, which were intense in the movie. I thought that was the best stuff in the movie, were the action of the tennis scenes. I'd never seen that before. Yeah, I've never seen that before. I love the camera basically almost attached to the ball going back and forth. That was really cool stuff.
That really got hectic towards the end there. That Zendaya was just a hoe in that movie. She was just terrible. She's just playing inside. I didn't know who to root for. It was a lot. But she was great in it. They were all great. Great young actors. I know that one Josh O'Connor, I think is his name. Now he's going to be a bunch of stuff coming up. It's very good.
That whole cast is all three of them are rising stars in the game. I mean, she's already an A-lister. She's probably one of the 10 most popular actresses on the planet right now, but even she's going to keep going.
No question. Well, let's dive into it before we get to you, Keith, and we'll talk about the AFC and NFC champions. But if you are watching live on YouTube, feel free to chime in because we're going to go over these Bears coaching hires as we got the news earlier this week and over the past several days about Ben Johnson building out his staff. So feel free to comment reactions to that. But the coordinators are set as far as, the bigger names as far as offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and special teams coordinator. We figured that Richard Hightower would be retained, which is great. I think at special teams, he did his job well. The Bears like him clearly. Dennis Allen, who was the hot name being floated as a D coordinator coming from the Saints in a head coaching stint, really just a home run as a defensive coordinator role. To bring him in is nice. At offensive coordinator, I'm not sure what other options were out there. And I, just have to plead ignorance, not really knowing his name, but Declan Doyle coming from Denver, being the tight ends coach, he seems to be a pretty great young mind, especially when you talk to Ben Johnson and company about it. And then, it begs to be mentioned too that Press Taylor just been added as passing game coordinator from the Jaguars, which is, I feel like, met with a lot of people not enjoying that aspect of it because of Jaguars just being trash. And Trevor Lawrence, neither here nor there. But then also, I feel like most analysts like Adam Schefter or whoever, and then obviously Ben Johnson, guys like that involved in the NFL, really, they think that it's just, the product of a bad place at a bad time as far as the Jaguars placement, Press Taylor. But, I want to focus, obviously Declan Doyle in a second, but Dennis Allen, we talked about last time around, Ross, that he would be the number one name, and that's a really good signing there. But Declan Doyle, coming in a really young career, he went from an assistant at Iowa to an offensive assistant with the Saints, the tight ends coach with the Broncos, and then offensive coordinator with the Bears. That's the end of the list. That's really impressive. From, a college, went to Iowa Western and Iowa. And again, 28 years old is really young to entrust your offensive play calling. What did you think when you heard the name Declan Doyle, and what reaction did you have?
Yeah, I mean, he's been an up-and-coming guy on Sean Payton's staff now for a few years. You mentioned it. He spent some time in Iowa. I think the biggest thing for me, the common thing with this whole entire staff on offense is, number one, this is Ben Johnson's offense, and he's going to create this offense. He's going to mold this offense, and he's going to be the one calling plays every single week, week in and week out. So your offensive coordinator, Declan Doyle, is not going to be your play caller this year. But with guys like Doyle and Press Taylor and a lot of the other guys that they brought in, you notice a theme with all of these guys. They are young, and they come from a background where a lot of these guys really grinded out tape and really focused on film study and things like that. And I think that's what Ben Johnson wanted to bring to the table with this staff. He wanted some guys who were essentially, I made a joke on X yesterday, Twitter X, whatever you want to call it, that he hired a bunch of guys who at some point were playing Call of Duty and drinking Mountain Dew all the time. And that's what you got. You got some guys who are going to stay in the Hallis Hall late nights and grind some tape and help Ben Johnson formulate a game plan week in and week out. So he didn't hire play callers. I understand, like for Press Taylor, for example, Bears fans were like, oh, this guy sucked as a play caller in Jacksonville. And yeah, you're right. He did. He was not a good offensive coordinator in Jacksonville, but he's not brought here to be an offensive coordinator. And the guy did have success in Philadelphia when they won the Super Bowl, when he came on board with Doug Peterson. He's brought here to help grind tape, to help Ben Johnson install his offense week in and week out. And I think that's something that's really underrated with a lot of these hires. Ben Johnson will create the offense, but on a Monday, on a Tuesday, and a Wednesday, Ben Johnson has to be in 6 different rooms. He's got to meet with the quarterbacks. He's He's got to meet the running backs. He's got to go over to the defense. He's got to check out the safeties and what they're doing this week. He's got to check out what the defensive line is doing. He's got to check on special teams. He's all over the place. He needs help from these other offensive guys to install his weekly offense week in and week out. And I think that's where you get the minds of Declan Doyle and Press Taylor and JT Barrett and Antoine Randall L. and all these guys. He wants young guys that can relate with these players. I think that's important nowadays. You see the coaches starting to get younger and not older, and also be able to help him grind out week in, week out and put this very intricate offense into place. And I think at some point, after he gets all these guys on board, they're probably going to disappear in some beautiful retreat somewhere, maybe in the beautiful waters of somewhere in Canada, and lock themselves in a cabin for a month. And they're going to create this massive, massive offense together centered around Caleb Williams and Roman Dunze and DJ Moore. And I'm sure they've got some free agent options in mind and drafts in mind. So I like the Declan Doyle option. A lot of people are saying Ben Johnson hired the next Ben Johnson, or the next Kyle Shanahan, or the next Sean McVay.
Yeah, real student of the game. Everything you read about and take from his press conference, he said, quote, "I think knowledge is power. That's what the guys care about ultimately. Last year was the first time I've ever actually been older than all the players in my room. This is going to be my 10th year, but that's really kind of been a part of my journey to this point," which is, it's interesting in the NFL to think of that perspective when there's these vets that he's coaching and trying to learn from a guy who is only 28 years on this earth. He talked about Antoine Randall L. coming from the Lions coaching staff as well. Ben Johnson able to get him there. It's coming together. It seems that at this point in time, it's a turnaround for sure on offense and defense. Dennis Allen, sort of an old school mind with the coordinator, which I think, he'll retain a lot of the aspects that the Bears defense had, and try to really enforce takeaways. And then, you just got to give them the tools to succeed as far as a pass rusher opposite Montez Sweat, and then figure out, again, we talked about the big decisions looming in free agency are also who you're going to retain on this roster at this point. But, as far as any holes in the coaching staff, you see anything else coming through the pipeline in this near future in the coming weeks here before we jump into the Super Bowl and whatnot, Ross?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is they're going to need to find themselves an offensive line coach. I think that's going to be the biggest hire coming up, and that's going to be the one that you want to lock down, because that's going to be one of the most important pieces. Obviously there were rumors about Fraley, the offensive line coach from the Lions, coming aboard, but he declined that, and he's deciding to stay in Detroit. So I think that's going to be Ben Johnson's next big hire. He'll add some more quality control guys, some under the radar guys here and there, and in all three phases. But who the offensive line coach is going to be is going to be a big deal. And I think that's where we're talking about him hiring a bunch of kids, 28-year-olds, and guys like JT Barrett. We remember JT Barrett back in Ohio State, and I remember watching Antoine Randall L. I'm almost the same age as him when he was in Thornton High School and was a great two-sport star at playing baseball and football, and he went to Indiana. And so a lot of these guys are very young. But when it comes to offensive line, give me an old 62-year-old, jerky eating, double cup of coffee, just spit flaring from the mouth, two double belly kind of guy, just an old school football coach to get this offensive line back on the straight and narrow. So I think he'll go with a veteran presence there, very similar to like what he did with Dennis Allen. Dennis Allen, obviously, head coaching experience, been a defensive coordinator in this league for a long time. He is the head coach of that side of the football, so to speak. And I expect Ben Johnson to bring in a guy of a similar stature for the offensive line coach.
Going to be really important to get it right in the offensive line as far as that is concerned, because that unit was pretty dismal for Caleb Williams in the bottom 5 for sacks allowed. He was running for his life. And, as much as this is getting filled out at this point, really what focus in the Bears, as we're focusing on the last game of the NFL season, is in the Senior Bowl and who, in the draft, of course, when that rolls around, in a couple months. What's going to be happening in regard to that as far as their board is concerned? The Senior Bowl is fun because you see those guys really just owning it and really playing well against competition. The guys like Marshall's Mike Green, who's really making his name as a pass rusher, and then Gray Zabel, who was an offensive lineman who's moved around at North Dakota State, who hasn't lost a rep in the eyes of a lot of scouts out there right now. So some names are popping out. Obviously Ryan Poles being there and the rest of his scouts. Have you checked that out at any point right now, Ross? And you think that there's I know that we've thought pretty much that offensive line is going to be the most important priority drafting, but free agency will kind of dictate that as well. But yeah, have you caught any in the Senior Bowl?
I did. I was catching some of the practice stuff this week. A lot of guys, there's been some talent out there. In addition to the offensive line being a need for the Bears, I think they're taking a strong look at that. And there's been some studs in practice, but I think, you look at Dennis Allen, and we haven't really talked much about his scheme. He likes bigger defensive linemen. He likes guys that are very big, very physical, because he wants his corners to play man-to-man a lot more. So I expect a guy like Jalen Johnson to follow the team's number one wide receiver all across the board. Expect guys like Kyler Gordon to play more man-to-man coverage, Tyreek Stevenson to be more physical. So you're going to need some big defensive linemen to back that up. And so I was looking this week, guys like Landon Jackson has stood out to me, defensive lineman. He's 6'6", 273 pounds, and he's starting to wreak some real havoc this week in one-on-ones. Darius Alexander is another guy, 6'4", 304 pounds, explosive interior defensive line. A lot of people are saying this is one of the best interior defensive line drafts we've had in a long time. And so I think the Bears are going to go out there and get themselves a big, big, nasty, ugly guy within the middle rounds to complement Billings, who they lost with injury last year, and really beef up the interior of that line. And don't sleep on other positions too. I mean, there are some other positions, the Bears could still use a wide receiver as well. So I expect them to go out there and look at guys in this Senior Bowl as well. Maybe you can get a guy like a Tez Johnson, who is kind of a gadget guy. He's little, he's 5'9", but he's a good route runner. He's got some explosiveness out there. He can probably play special teams for you. Again, Bears and you look at this Ben Johnson offense, he puts a lot of guys in position to get open and use their speed and agility. So, there's going to be some trick players, some gadget players that he wants to use. You got to try to find your Jahmyr Gibbs light here and there, your Jamison Williams types as well.
Sure. Yeah, you definitely want some gadget players. And if the stream's going in and out, we apologize. I think there's probably weather issues as it's begun to torrentially downpour in the area, but you hit it on the head as far as just looking in the first few rounds. You're going to look for some gems. Obviously, that top 10 overall pick is going to be really important to hit right for the Bears. But I'm curious to see, of these guys in the wide receiving core rising up, who's really going to impress. Come the combine too, and moving up on draft spots. It's a huge draft for the Bears, and it's really early in the process of the offseason, as we're still have yet to play the Super Bowl, but it's so paramount that Ben Johnson gets this right. But above all, getting the offensive line coach and making sure that is all squared away and the rest of his staff is as well, is really all I have eyes on as far as the Bears are concerned in the rest of the next several weeks. What about you, Ross? Any parting thoughts before we move on to the Super Bowl?
No, I think that's it. Now you're going to head into the quietness a little bit for the next couple of weeks as teams start to hunker down. They'll finalize their staff, obviously, and then we're going to get the combine. We're going to get the combine in a couple of weeks, and then I think that's where you're going to see a lot of what the Bears are going to be looking for. They're going to be looking for interior offensive linemen. They're going to be looking for interior defensive linemen. They're going to look for speed and explosiveness. And that's where things really get fun. And then also we're going to start to hear some things about, from a free agency standpoint, what teams are going to do, maybe what they're going to do in terms of, who they're going to re-sign, not re-sign. I talked about Trey Smith last week, the right guard for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think after they play the Super Bowl, we're going to start to hear some information pretty quickly about his future with the Chiefs. And I think that's going to be a big, big, big domino. If the Chiefs let him on the open market, I fully expect the Bears to back up the Briggs truck and sign him as their big, big ticket free agent day one.
Yeah, that will be curious to see, but let's move focus to the Chiefs and the Eagles, the big game, 59th Super Bowl LIX. Chiefs going for that three-peat. The Eagles going for redemption from 2 years ago, just stacked with talent on both sides. Talk about multi-sport athletes. It's cool to read up on. We knew that, Pat Mahomes could have went pro in baseball, but also just Jalen Hurts and his history of just athleticism. He's just been a monster from his days at high school. And then, of course, going to Alabama, a track athlete, and a big part of why that rushing attack is just so impressive. And they just beat down, as far as the Eagles are concerned, beating down Washington in a high scoring affair, and Saquon Barkley looking like that huge difference maker that might get them sweet, sweet revenge over Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs. Because, A.J. Brown, Sirianni, Jalen Hurts just came up short in that 38-35 loss to the Chiefs a couple of years ago. But it looks like Saquon Barkley playing with a really big chip on his shoulder. Giants obviously fumbled the bag. It's fun to see that coming out repeatedly as well. But the Chiefs on the other side, and Andy Reid and Mahomes and Travis Kelce just trying to add to their legacies at this point. Three in a row. You ask Travis Kelce, he just wants the one in front of him. But obviously, they would make it 3 in a row. And now, the big talk, of course, is who are you rooting for in the Super Bowl? And I'm not torn. I have Philly roots, and so I would certainly say go Birds at this point. But at the same time, it's what we're seeing from Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid is something really special. And Travis Kelce, just when we thought we'd seen possibly the best tight end of all time in Rob Gronkowski and how unstoppable he was, we're seeing Travis Kelce in a down year, and Pat Mahomes for that matter, in a down statistically year, getting their team back to a Super Bowl with this team around him. Chris Jones too getting in there, and just the way that this organization is able to get back there a third time is unprecedented in the sport. The Eagles too, no slouch to get back to second Super Bowl in 3 years is super impressive. And again, when we talked about Nick Sirianni early on in the season and his back up against the wall and could be showing him the door if they come anywhere close to not getting to a Super Bowl. If they lost in that NFC Championship game, we might be hearing about him being dismissed or something like that. But the Eagles and Chiefs very destined for each other. I will say, I don't really buy into the refs fixing these games as far as Chiefs and Bills are concerned for the AFC Championship game. I think it's some bad breaks, and there's just going to be some bad calls either way. It was hilarious that Dalton Kincaid on that pass where he could have caught it, that the flag was picked up, and people were saying just in case he did catch it, it was just there. But Josh Allen and all these other guys will tell you got to beat the best to be the best, and it sucks to go 0-4 against Pat Mahomes and company, but they're there for very good reason. Now at a neutral stadium in New Orleans, which will be rocking next week. And, they handled their business, both teams. And the Eagles seem to have a little more momentum for me. And I already made it clear who I'm rooting for. Who do you like in this matchup, Ross? What do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, I know people, it's funny because I think back in the day, we used to get really excited about rematches in Super Bowl. I think we all grew up. Yeah. I grew up, the Bills went to the Super Bowl 4 straight times and lost 4 straight times. And they played the Giants, they played the Cowboys a couple times. We've seen 49er Cowboys in the past, and Steelers have played a bunch of rematch Super Bowls as well. We've had the Patriots in there as well, play the Giants 2 times. In this game, I think this comes down to who's going to be able to control the line of scrimmage more. And for that, I do favor the Philadelphia Eagles. I think they have arguably the best offensive line in football, and they have the best ball control individual. I think they have the best weapon right now in the playoffs, and that is, I understand Pat Mahomes is on the other side of the football, but the way Saquon Barkley is playing right now, he is playing absolutely out of his mind. It's just an absolute backbreaker to see Washington last week keep going it for it on fourth down, not go for it on 4th and 3, kick a field goal, and then Saquon Barkley just walks your ass right off his first snap for 60-something yards and a touchdown. That just is an absolute backbreaker as a team, but that's what he's doing right now. And that's what the offensive line is doing. And then on the flip side, they've got this defensive line. They got Jalen Carter and Josh Sweat and all these other guys that are just absolutely destroying the line of scrimmage and making things very, very uncomfortable for quarterbacks out there. Now, obviously, Pat Mahomes, different ball game. He is a Hall of Famer, but we've seen Hall of Famers get beat with pressure. Pat Mahomes has gotten beat in a Super Bowl thanks to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with the pressure that they put on him. And guys like Brady have gotten beat in Super Bowls with the pressure that they get put on them. So I do like this rested defensive and offensive line for the Eagles going into Super Bowl. I also like the fact that they're indoors, they're on turf, and they're able to really get their some speed going and generate things. But that doesn't mean that I'm counting the Chiefs out, of course. It's very tough to ever bet against Pat Mahomes, especially in these big spots. For me, I think for the Chiefs, they have to get their quick pass game going. They've got to be able to get the football out of Pat Mahomes' hands quickly. You want to be able to find some space for Travis Kelce in the middle of the field. You've got to be able to get Worthy open out in space and let him try and get, connect. In the past, we saw guys like McCole Hardman be able to do this for them. Obviously, they had Tyreek Hill before in the last Super Bowl that these two teams played against each other. They don't really have that explosive, trustworthy guy over the top other than Worthy. So can DeAndre Hopkins step up and make some plays? Can Juju Smith-Schuster step up and make some plays? Can the running game get going with Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco? Those are the things that I see. I think at the end of the day, Philadelphia is going to try and grind this game out in shortened possessions of this game, try and keep Mahomes off the football field, and really try and run the football with Barkley. Use that read option with Jalen Hurts because he now gets 2 weeks off to rest that knee and be healthy. And he's only got one game left, and he's got the rest of this offseason to lock in. I like the Eagles, man. I like their weapons a lot on offense, and I like their defense a lot. I think that their defense can get those key stops that you need, and I'm going to pick them. And I know it's tough to pick against Pat Mahomes, but I got the Eagles in this game just because I like the way they play in the trenches.
It's tough to pick against the Chiefs, who are favored by 1.5 points. It should be mentioned at this point in time for many reasons, because of this feeling like destiny, because of the coaching of Andy Reid, because of maybe the NFL trying to get Taylor Swift and viewers more involved into this sort of situation. But everything you mentioned as far as the, looking at the battle in the trenches and looking at the Eagles as a whole, the defense, they were real impressive against Washington, and they were able to shut down Jaden Daniels for the most part and do whatever they wanted against Washington this past Sunday. And this defense has carried them all year, and largely because of that guy you mentioned, Jalen Carter, and that great back end, that secondary that they have with Cooper DeJean and CJ Gardner-Johnson. And they just really play so well as a unit, all 11 of them, that you figure that's going to give them a big edge. With Kansas City, if you're locking up Travis Kelce, I do wonder who else is going to get loose. We know that Xavier Worthy has been great, and he's certainly worthy of probably that number 1 overall spot. Hollywood Brown might be waiting for just the right time to make his mark. And Juju Smith-Schuster, we know he's seen a Super Bowl before as well and had some success there. With that defense too, as far as the Chiefs, are they up to the task of stopping this Eagles run offense that is just going to be plotting? And if they can try to bottle up Saquon Barkley, good luck. You can't stop him and Jalen Hurts. I feel like we haven't seen it. We saw Washington. They had to jump the snap count. They had to start going off sides to try to stop it. And to which the ref said, we're just going to give them a touchdown. Which is like, I don't think you can do that.
Right. And that's the thing, is like they've got the most unstoppable play in football. So if it gets to 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 4th and 1, 4th and 2, it works 99% of the time. Like, you can't stop it. I think, and you get to these tough, tight games, that matters.
It certainly does matter. And, if you do somehow stop Saquon and force them into passing, we saw Jalen Hurts, as much as we tried to point it the negatives as far as his passing yards. He is able to drop it in on a dime to A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith. John Dotson's a weapon. We know Dallas Goedert can get out there to an open field, and he can play up to Travis Kelce's level. I would want a close game. I just feel like this, and it should be a close game if that last game 2 years ago was any indication, even though it's a slightly different narrative for both teams at this point. Age plays into a factor. You wonder if Chris Jones and company are healthy and if they can hold up again in the trenches against this offensive line of the Eagles. I know they had their injury concerns going into Sunday with like Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens, but Jordan Mailata, he's playing on another level, just paving ways for these guys. It all gets won in the trenches, like you said, but really the legacies of either quarterbacks. We talked about Jalen Hurts and how his lock screen is him walking off the field with the confetti in the Super Bowl a couple years ago. That stays with you. And this guy is been competing at the highest level for a long time. These teams don't like each other, and I think Nick Sirianni doesn't like that this Chiefs team any more than Andy Reid and the Chiefs like the Eagles at this point. And they really, if they wanted to pick a team out of the NFC, they would want this Chiefs team to be the one they go against. So I'm curious to see who comes out on top. I agree with you. I feel like it's Eagles at this point, really. Overwhelmingly a favorite to me, just based on that rushing attack and if they're able to control the pace of the game. But Pat Mahomes, man, what he's been able to do on this big stage is, at this point, it's going to solidify him into that GOAT status, or at least, put him up in that talk repeatedly. But they'll see it as a miss if they come ultimately short. But he's just able to extend the play so well and really rises to the occasion.
He does, and so for me, it's going to be a big thing in this football game. We can throw out every numbers, or all the stats in the world out there, and in Cocaine Bears even got some great ones to support the Mahomes argument in the comments right now, which is why we're going to talk about Saquon Barkley all day and the offensive line for the Eagles all day. At the end of the day, Jalen Hurts is going to have to make some big throws in this football game. There's going to come a point in time where he's going to have to connect and make some big throws. He's had an up and down season. He's had up and down playoffs. I like the way he played in the NFC Championship game. That's against the Washington Commanders team that was a little happy to be there. Defense was a little shaky coming into it. But he made some big throws. He made some good throws. AJ Brown had a good game, 6 receptions for 96 yards and a touchdown. I expect Jalen Hurts to continue to lean on Dallas Goedert, who had 7 receptions for 85 yards. But this is going to come a point in time where you're staring at the barrel of Pat Mahomes at the other side, who's going to keep making plays, and you're going to have to make a big throw or a big 2 or 3 throws if you want to get a ring. And can Jalen Hurts do that? I hope he can. Let's see if he can do it. Remember the last Super Bowl they were in? I think he had 3 rushing touchdowns, right? But they still lost the game. And he was dynamic. He was awesome. But at the end of the day, your quarterback still has to throw the football to win it all. And can he make that big throw to knock off one of the top 3 best quarterbacks of all time? Because we know when it gets tight and when it gets fourth quarter and things are really just like we're trying to figure out who's going to win this football game, Pat Mahomes is going to rise to the occasion like he did last year, and they won in overtime. We have seen lesser quarterbacks not be able to overcome Pat Mahomes, the Brock Purdy's of the world and the Jimmy Garoppolo's of the world. We saw Tom Brady be able to go toe-to-toe with him. That's the greatest of all time. Can Jalen Hurts put himself into that above the Purdy's and the Garoppolos of the world? I hope he can, because this can't be all just Saquon Barkley, because Steve Spagnuolo is going to come ready for that running game. And so I hope Jalen Hurts can really rise to the occasion. And I agree with you. At the end of the day, regardless of who wins this football game, we're Bears fans. So we just want to see a good, entertaining football game from start all the way to finish. Hopefully we get a good finish in this football game.
And we can say you want to key in if you're Spagnuolo and Andy Reid and the Chiefs and key in on Saquon Barkley at this point, but just talking about the legacies of these players, Saquon Barkley has just been remarkable. He's been unbelievable in all of these games. I mean, the 205-yard game against the Rams, he's the last down game he has was against a stout Pittsburgh defense. Other than that, he's just been on a tear, going for over 100 yards every game, with longs of 60-yard runs. And I just don't – I haven't seen that from Kansas City's defense. I think they were able to let James Cook get away from them a bit and force the offense to carry the load quite a bit. I don't know if that same scenario will play out against the Eagles on Super Bowl Sunday. And Jalen Hurts ultimately, yeah, I think that he wants this spotlight on him, and he wants this redemption, and he can't just get it done. He's shown that he can get it done on the ground before, but you can score 3 touchdowns in the Super Bowl 2 years ago and still lose. I just feel like that Saquon Barkley factor is huge, and he's one of the favorites for Super Bowl MVP for very good reason. Most favored of any non-quarterback position player in years, I think at this point. So, in New Orleans on like you said, on turf, it's going to be fast. It's going to be fun. You got a prediction for me?
Yeah, I was going to say, how about this interesting wrinkle? The New Orleans Saints don't have a head coach right now. They're the only team left without a head coach. Their head coach could be in the booth in New Orleans for the Super Bowl, and I think that's Kellen Moore. This is or Kellen Moore actually coaches on the sidelines. Excuse me, he calls plays from sidelines. This is a big Kellen Moore spot. I think if Kellen Moore has to look across the field against Chris Jones, and they've got some other studs on their defense, and also Steve Spagnuolo is going in the Hall of Fame as one of the best defensive coordinators of all time. This is a guy that took out Tom Brady twice in a Super Bowl. And so this is a really big spot for Kellen Moore in what could be his next home as a head coach as soon as 24 to 48 hours after this football game. So big spot for Kellen Moore. This is where also coaching comes into play a lot, because he needs to put Jalen Hurts in a position with the matchups for him to succeed. And obviously, if we're talking about coaching, we lean towards the Chiefs right now. Got Andy Reid's going to the Super Bowl. Spagnuolo's going to the Super Bowl. Dave Toub, as a special teams coach, should go to the Super Bowl. Should go to the Hall of Fame. You got Matt Nagy, who's Matt Nagy, but you lean coaching with the Chiefs. But here's a big spot for guys like Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore to really step up and go out there and slay the dragon.
Yes, sir. I hope for a good game. Do you have a
score? Prediction. Yeah. I got it. Yes. These Super Bowls are always very tight at the beginning. Everybody's sphincters are always very tight. So I expect low-scoring game in the first half, a little bit of an explosion in the second half. I got the Chiefs. I got the Eagles, 31, Chiefs 28.
Oh, it was literally the score I was going to go with. As we remember from 2 years ago, 38-35, they won on a Harrison Butker kick. But just to change it up a little bit, 27-24, I think the Birds go out on top, and we see the three-peat come just short. It's going to be a hell of a halftime show, as we talked about Kendrick Lamar and SZA. Very pumped to see what happens there. Do they bring out Lil Wayne for some New Orleans love, or do they bring out some other features, some top dog people?
Yeah, I don't know. I would not bring out Lil Wayne because I think that he's at a point where he probably
doesn't want to come out of this point.
Exactly. He doesn't want to play third fiddle to somebody. It's New Orleans. To me, you got to bring out some classic New Orleans artists. If you put a little jazz in there, I would even want like a trombone shorty out there. You could put like Big Frida out there, who she's a very amazing representative. If you want to put Harry Connick out there, Harry Connick Jr., but I expect him to also go heavy into the Deep South line dancing and the marching bands and a lot of that. So I expect him to come out first song right off the bat, whether it's Not Like Us or Damn or anything like that, with a heavy band influence. And then he eases into his jazz set. And I expect him to finish with something uplifting, like All the Stars he has with SZA from the Black Panther soundtrack. Or my personal prediction, his last song is going to be We're Gonna Be All Right. That's going to be the last one of the year as we go through a year already that started and we just came off a presidential election and everybody's on edge and this and that. And he's going to try and bring everybody together and say, for this moment right now, we're going to be all right.
just in his mini set alone during that LA Super Bowl was very cool. He did play all right, and the choreography, all of that was really cool to see. And you talked about his jazz influences. Harry Connick Jr. and Kendrick Lamar sharing the stage would be something else, but to get this New Orleans brass involved in one of those To Pimp a Butterfly tracks would be really cool to see. You know that he's 100% looks like right now to playing Not Like Us and off of GNX. We'd probably see TV off and then a couple others from there. I'm interested to see outside of those major hits from this last year what he goes with, and if anybody else out there, on the Top Dog label or in the New Orleans music scene makes it onto the stage with him. But he ultimately Kendrick is going to be, I feel like, not relying on the features, even though SZA is being added or has been added last week. Yeah, man, Super Bowl. It's almost over, folks. It's unfortunate that we see an end of the 2024-25 season so soon. It flies by every time, but we couldn't ask for a better matchup and a better headliner, I feel like, and a better city to host the Super Bowl. I think New Orleans is really up to the challenge and the task of doing this. It's going to be rocking.
Yeah. I want to know how I get some of those, have you seen this Don Julio and Popeyes crossover that they're doing down there?
Yeah. Some reposado chicken.
How do I get some of those reposado wings? Like, are they going to sell those? Because I probably
that, of course, the big cities like New York and LA are getting this, but why not Chicago? Come on.
Yeah, there's a Popeyes a mile from my house. I promise you, if they were selling that, I would go get me some reposado wings for the Super Bowl. That sounds amazing. Everybody knows my favorite tequila is 1942. I sip on that all the time. So
just bring your own Don Julio over there. I'm sure they can whip something up for you.
Just dip the Popeyes in the reposado.
A little bite to that. They do have a good chicken sandwich. Love that chicken and Popeyes.
Yes, they do.
Let's switch focus to the NBA, Ross. We haven't talked about it a lot at all, mostly because the Bulls are asses. I rock their hoodie here. They're terrible. Matas Buzelis, a.k.a. Little Boozy Vert, he'll be in the dunk contest. And that kid's got some bounce. He'll be challenging Mac McClung and a few others. But other than that, no good news with this Bulls team. They're middling as usual. They're like a 10th seed in the East. Zach LaVine doesn't look like he's going anywhere. You can't move him. Patrick Williams, undeniably awful. It just unwatchable, I feel like the largely NBA, which I want to talk about in a minute. But it's tough, Ross, and we've talked about it repeatedly. We had a lot of, I feel like, optimism with Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley and coming in and hopefully changing of the guard would point to maybe this team just getting out of hell here and not drafting in the same spot, getting bigger free agent name, getting a superstar. But I don't understand at this point just what they're doing. And I do know to the extent that Zach LaVine, their future is kind of tied to him and what they can do as far as moving him. And there are no buyers on that front. But then to see Patrick Williams blow up in your face is real unfortunate. And, the lone bright spots like Kobe White are there that you got to move past this point of Zach LaVine and Vucevic. Like once these two are gone, you can start really tanking, I feel like, and hopefully get back into the lottery and build up like the Thunder. But at this point, would you even try to buy tickets to a Bulls game, Ross? Are they even on the radar as entertaining?
I was having a conversation with a buddy about this on Sunday because him and I used to go to Bulls games all the time with each other, and we do miss going to Bulls games. I miss being in the United Center. That's Bulls and Blackhawks games for that matter. Yeah, absolutely. It's a fun place to be at. I would, and I told him I'm at the point now where the only time I would go to a Bulls game would be because the other team has a draw that I want to see. So if Wemby's in town, I'm in. I want to go see Wemby. The fact of the matter is, like, from a consumer standpoint, the tickets are just still sky high. Like, if you want to go to a game, if I want to take me and my kid to a game on a Saturday night, I'm spending easily $500 to go to a game. That's before food and drinks and stuff like that and parking and stuff like that. So, right now as a consumer, you can't justify, dropping that kind of coin to see a team right now that is 20-28. Even if you do see Giannis in town or Steph Curry, because you don't know how long he's going to play or anything like that. So, the product on the court is not good. I do think, the next Thursday is the trade deadline. They both Carlos Silvas has not made any midseason trade since he has been on the Bulls, since the Vucevic trade. So he's gone 3 years now since making any midseason trade. I do think this is the year that he is going to make a few moves. I think Vucevic will be moved off of this roster come next Thursday. I think Lonzo Ball, who's on an expiring deal, will also be moved off the roster as well. Whether Zach LaVine gets moved or not, I don't know. And I have maybe a slightly controversial take. He's playing at all-star level this year, and after this season, he only has 2 years left on his deal. I would not give Zach LaVine away just to give him away right now in the middle of the season. I think you can probably sell higher on him in the offseason when he only has 2 years left on the deal. But they need to finish top 10 or better in the lottery this year, because the Spurs hold on to their pick, but it is lottery protected. And right now, the Bulls are currently sitting 10th in the Eastern Conference, which will put them in the play-in game. You don't want to be in the play-in game. You want Philadelphia, who's right behind you, to jump you, and you want to finish 11th or worse. And that's why the Bulls need to trade a couple pieces. They're 2-8 in their last 10 games, and kind of bottom out a little bit. And they need to hold on to that pick, and they need to take a hard look at themselves, and it's time to press the reset button. We're okay. We need to go through a full-fledged rebuild. And I know Carlos Silvas is nervous because he probably thinks, if we're going through a rebuild, I'm not going to be the one leading it. But you had your bed, you laid in it, you gave us this. Now here we are. So,
yeah, no question. I mean, that's unfortunately the reality for Bulls fans. Like you mentioned, the big draw is like if Steph Curry is coming in town, you don't know the last time you'll see him or LeBron or see KD come through with the Suns. That's really what you're trying to see. But it's just. You're looking at other markets like Houston, who's on fire right now. They're going to play Memphis. You can go to that game for $2, starting there, and then the prices around the stadium that much better too. And the misdirection from the United Center, it's kind of interesting, the parallels with the Bears, but this seems more concrete. We know what they can do with it because of owning the parking lots and the land around the United Center. Is their development around that? But I mean, it's not going to help the product on the floor, and that's up to Carlos Silvas, like we talked about. Moving on from these guys who are the focal points, and Vucevic is like a new Carlos Boozer, just dropping double, 20 and 10 in a losing effort. It's just not serving its purpose as far as getting you back up into the top tier with the Cavaliers and the Celtics and the rest of these powers, looking at your own division, not just, outside of that as well. It's really, unfortunate because, we saw that probably the best moment of the season was that Derrick Rose night.
sure.
And, they got the dub, and Derrick Rose and Joakim Noah and Stacey King all got to speak, and you got Neil Funk back in. And that was the one game I tuned into, and I don't think I'll tune into another because they just have nothing to play for besides that play-in game. It's the same narrative. And I like that there's some youth on this roster, but where does it fit in long-term? And what are you going to do moving on from Zach LaVine at this point? And what are you going to do to further this franchise back into competing? And they don't look like they know what they're doing at this point. And so, it's kind of just better luck next year mentality for me and so many Bulls fans at this point. It's just disappointing.
Yeah, it is. And you never know too, like they might be getting marching orders from their 80-something-year-old owner saying, keep them just mediocre enough just to keep the building full every night, which is, that sucks too. So yeah, hopefully better days are ahead for a lot of our sports teams in this city. Obviously we feel better about the Bears right now where they're at, but we're heading into spring season. We don't feel too great about our baseball teams right now. And we're supposed to have this budding star and Connor Bedard, and kind of like the Bulls, you can't even watch them on TV every night if you're in 80% of the households in the Chicago area, So that's also an issue too. Yeah. Side note, I bought a Connor Bedard jersey the other day. So my first hockey jersey in like 25 years. I'm excited.
What was the other hockey jersey? Everybody's dying to know.
I think it was a Jeremy Roenick jersey. So maybe more than 25 years.
Classic, my friend. Very good.
Yes.
That aged well. Bedard jersey, kid.
Yeah.
It's regarding the NBA as a whole. I talked about the Cavaliers, who are great. They don't even have double-digit losses yet, and we're about halfway through the season, and the rest of the superpowers are there, and the Celtics and the Knicks and the Bucks. Oklahoma City, great again this year. The Rockets are a great story. Youth, that's again a franchise that had a bunch of draft picks and they were able to turn it into, go from worst to first type of thing. That's what you need to do at this point. Memphis at third, Denver at fourth, and the Lakers kind of just good enough at fifth seed. But I have not watched a ton of NBA at all. I mean, by a ton, I mean a couple games and tuned in for a little bit. I feel like whenever I talk to buddies about it or people who follow the NBA, they say that's kind of a broken product at this point. It's largely unwatchable, and you hear about these rules being floated like a 4-point line or just sort of gimmicky things. Do you see this? And it's a tough point in the year too when you're going up against the NFL. I feel like people just get fatigued and they want to watch other things outside of sports. And it doesn't really get interesting until that second half, I suppose, even when you're trying to, have the early mid-season championship game that's been added. You could miss me with that. But, in the games that you've seen this year, do you feel that that's accurate, Ross? It's just sort of unwatchable as a lack of playing defense, or is it just, sort of the play from the teams or something else?
Yeah, I mean, I won't call it unwatchable. I think the big thing for people is, we're at a point with the sport where you don't know who's going to play on any given night with a lot of our stars. I think a lot of our aging stars, whether it's LeBron, whether it's Steph Curry, Joel Embiid, who's not even that old, but he's missed 400 games now in his career, and Kevin Durant's of the world and stuff like that. And so I think a lot of people who used to be NBA fans are trying to hold on to the stars of yesteryear, and then they're not out there that much, or you don't know where to find them and things like that. Obviously, the 3-point shooting has been a thing, but I do encourage people to try and get back into the NBA and try and watch some of the younger talent that we have, because there is some really good, fun, young talent that I enjoy watching. I think also this is a mistake by the NBA to not properly prop these young men up enough and really try and market the game, move the game towards these guys. Instead of Jimmy Butler and Pat Riley fighting week after week, being a dominant headline right now, how about we talk about more, Paolo Banchero, who's first overall pick from a couple of years ago, with a really fun Magic team that's been decimated by injuries, but they're still hanging in there. Or this Cleveland team who has Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, and you look at Evan Mobley, who's a really fun center. For me, anytime Victor Wembanyama is on my TV, I'm all in. That is like must-see box office TV for me. I think he's one of my 5 favorite athletes to watch right now. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is probably going to be your MVP this year on a Oklahoma team that has 37 wins right now. And then you talked about that Rockets team, super, super fun team. So there's a lot of fun teams out there. I also think like Jokic is one of the most impressive players I've seen in my lifetime, and not enough people watch him because he plays in Denver and he's not on TV a lot, and he doesn't jump out the gym. So there's still some fun games. I think that now with football being over, and you're going to see more games transition to Saturday nights on ABC and Sunday afternoons on ESPN and ABC, and throw on some of these games and watch some of these guys, not the LeBrons and stuffs of the world. We have to get past that generation. Those guys are old. Those guys are not going to win championships this year. But watch Oklahoma City and the way they move the ball and the way Shai Gilgeous-Alexander plays, and Chet Holmgren and all these guys, and Alex Caruso playing defense. And watch Cleveland, who's on right now, coincidentally playing the Atlanta Hawks, and how they play basketball. I think people are going to kind of lock back in a little bit because it is still a fun sport. And we do this with the NBA all the time. The NBA has these peaks and valleys. Where we have fun at certain points. We have these dips. We're in a little bit of a dip right now, but I think some of the young talent in the league, as the old guys usher out, are going to get better. There's some even better young talent coming out in college basketball right now, led by Cooper Flagg and some of the other guys. So we're going to see I think we're going to be in line for arguably our most exciting NCAA tournament in like a solid decade, which I think is going to really bolster the sport up as well. So take a peek at it, have an open mind, watch some hoops in the next couple months. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, what I take away from it is what you pointed at for the NBA the most to me is that there's this core of youth that's really coming out, and there's this changing of the guard. Everybody's like, oh, you got to really appreciate KD and Steph Curry and LeBron while they're still here. And like, yeah, it's nice that they're here. They're really at this point, in their final seasons. LeBron really chasing that last ring, and same could be said with KD. And I think that Golden State, their window is definitely closed right now with the departure of Klay Thompson, and now this year with an older Steph Curry. But yeah, you're seeing Oklahoma City as that new powerhouse of the West, and then Denver, like you said, with what Jokic has been able to do is really amazing. A triple double almost every night, averaging a triple double is almost unheard of. And it's really high powered offenses, and the Celtics and the Cavaliers, a good Knicks team. And yeah, I can get behind that. And in the second half of the season, that's what I want to see. In college basketball, as you said too, is that's getting really in the swing of things. Cooper Flagg, with all him being, the most heralded prospect in a long time, in going to Duke, we know that Duke has a lot to prove with him, and we've seen what they've done with a lot of talent before, not going as deep in the tournament as they should have potentially, but I'm curious to see when March Madness rolls around how he shows up. That's for sure. Well, we're running out of show, Ross. I got to say, to end it, my first trip to the UC will be Saturday. It's not the Bulls, it's not the Hawks, but it's Disney on Ice. I don't know if you've experienced this. It's going to be me and the kids and Moana and the princesses and Mickey and lots of mascots, which kind of scare me. I'm a little nervous. I don't know how to feel about it, but it'll be fun to take my kids to the United Center and see the Jordans black boxes, in person as well. There's that aspect which you'll have to explain to me off air at some point. But yeah, that'll be my first trip to the UC in a long time. I think I was at a Hawks game a year ago, and that was the last United Center experience. Have you done the Disney on Ice?
We did a Disney on Ice a while ago. Thankfully they still serve beer, so you'll be in luck.
Come on,
you can still have a couple beers. Yeah, I am. This weekend I will be double dosing it on two very, very different movies this weekend. I will be seeing Dogman tomorrow with my son.
Oh, nice.
Yes, get ready for the Dogman series of books. As your son gets older, he's going to be all in on that. This is a crime-fighting police officer who's half dog, half man, and very entertaining stuff. And then Saturday, I will lock it down and strap it in at Alamo Draft House for 4 hours of The Brutalist, and I will be a Brutalist boy for 4 hours. I cannot wait as I make the trek with Adrian Brody through this epic tale. And then on Sunday, I will successfully have concluded yet another month. It's been about 14 months in a row of never hearing a Chappell Rowan song when it comes on for the Grammys. I have still no clue who that person is.
Big Donut Club. You know that song, Ross.
I promise you, I've never heard one Chappell Rowan song in my life. Don't know who that person is.
I know it's in your Peloton classes, Ross. You don't have to lie to me and the viewers. That's all right, though. Ross, the Brutalist boy, Reed, I appreciate you. At Ross Reed on social media. Wish me luck on Saturday, and I wish you luck on Saturday for the Brutalist. That's the hard part, is just carving out the fucking time with 2 kids and a wife. And I got to go, like, if I go at 7:00, it's like, oh my God, it's midnight already here. So
2:30 movie. I told my wife I'll see you sometime Saturday night. I don't know when if we make it out alive.
Follow me at The Real Evan Mack. Follow the Barroom Network at Barroom Network. We appreciate you all tuning in on YouTube, watching us live. The entire episode will also be on Spotify, iTunes for the audio-only versions. Like, subscribe, tell a friend or two. And again, follow at Barroom Network for all of our great off-season programming. And everybody, as we say, be good to each other out there. So long.
Peace.